Hello, welcome to my channel. I am Michelle and this is Michelle Creates. In this video I am going to be loom knitting. I grabbed my 24 peg round loom. The reason why I grabbed the 24 peg is because I'm going to just show you stitches and I'm not working on a project, so I kind of wanted to shorten the video. I grabbed acrylic yarn in the 4-weight and I'm grabbing the white because that way using a lighter color you can see the stitches better. I do suggest practicing before you do a project, especially if you're just a beginner, because then that way you can use scrap yarn and you can just kind of see how the project is turning out, or even just stitches to get a technique down and your system down before you actually start a project, because if you do make a mistake with loom knitting, it's really hard to fix it. So I'm going to be doing the E-wrap cast on, the E-wrap stitch, and then also a cast off. And because I'm using the loom and the 4-weight yarn, for most of the projects that I've done using the loom for hats and different decorations, I use 2 strands of yarn. So it actually looks tighter. I wouldn't say it's thicker necessarily is why I'm doing it, but it actually looks tighter because the gauge here and the pegs, they're a little bit bigger. And so if you just use a single strand, it actually looks a little bit more loose. Just depends on the project that you're doing. But I do prefer to use the double strand yarn, and that's why I'm doing that today. So with my yarn, when I work with the yarn in the skein, I always pull from the middle. It's easier to work with because it pulls out really nice, usually. If you work from the outside, you have to always unwind it, so it takes longer, but because we're double stranding it, we have to use both. And so what I like to do is prep my yarn. I unwind enough, keep it nice and loose so it doesn't knot up for you, but have enough yarn on hand so you can kind of get into your groove and just start wrapping instead of trying to constantly pull and get yarn ready. All right, so double stranding it, we're going to do a single knot for the beginning. This will create my anchor stitch and also my tail, and I usually do about a 2-inch right here tail. And I'm going to take the excuse me, the top of the loop here, and we're going to put it on that starter peg and just pull it enough so it doesn't come off. Don't pull it too tight. You will be pulling this off in a bit. All right, so we are doing the E-wrap cast on, and I'm going to do a flat panel, so I'm not going to connect my yarn on the end peg and the starter peg. So for the E-wrap, you're just going to take it behind the first peg. Go, here's your starter. Which peg do I start with? I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start to the right, that first peg to the right. So I'm going to take my yarn and go right through the middle, and I'm going to E-wrap, meaning I'm going to make the shape of a lowercase e, and I wrap it around to the front. Okay, and I take it from the back, wrap it around to the front. Once you get going, your yarn kind of sets up for you, so it's easy to remember. Like, you're not gonna, do I go in the front or the back? It's already set up for you. Okay. How am I setting up my hands? I'm working to the right with my right hand, pulling my yarn, getting it ready with the right hand. My left hand is actually, of course, holding my loom, but I'm taking my hand through the middle and holding the yarn so it doesn't unravel. If you don't hold this down, then this yarn is pretty loose, the whole thing will unravel. And at the same time, as I'm wrapping, I'm pushing the yarn down to get it ready for my next step. So I'm kind of doing a few things here at the same time. So I'm wrapping from the back of the peg around to the front, holding it down with my left hand and pushing the yarn down as I'm working. I do about 3 or 4 wraps before I push it down. And we're going to go all the way. Again, I'm doing a flat panel, so I am not going to connect my yarn with my first peg. Okay, I'm going around from the back to the front. once you get going, you kind of get the gist. All right, I'm getting towards the end. And I'm not pulling on my yarn, I'm shaking it because there's no knot in it. It just looks a little knotted. But if you just shake that yarn, you'll be able to pull that right out. All right, getting to the end, I wrap it around to the front. And now I'm on my last peg from the beginning, right? So I'll go around it and go to the front. And I'm not connecting, so I'm gonna now move into the opposite direction. So I'm switching hands. Now I'm holding the yarn with my right hand, and I am going to, okay, this is the end, so I wrap that. I'm not going to wrap this peg again, okay? So it's already wrapped once. Now we're gonna call this our starting peg as we go to the next row, basically. You always skip the first row with the wrap, okay? So, and the yarn is kind of telling us what to do here. I'm going around to the back and around to the front. Start with the back first and wrap to the front to make your E wrap. And I also want to keep my rows separate here so it's easier to knit over. So I'm not pushing that top row down. Keep it separate. Holding it with my now right hand so it doesn't unravel, because it will, and that's not fun. Oop. Oh, do you see how that one separated? Watch that as you're working the double strands. That can happen, so watch to make sure they stay together. And it's doing it again. It's probably because I'm working with my left hand. I'm right-handed, so not as quick with my left. You also do not need to worry about the yarn. See how nice that pulls out in the middle? You don't need to worry about untwisting your yarn as you're working it. It's not going to make any difference. I used to be real picky in the beginning and made sure it was like straight and flat, and then the next time I tried it I didn't do that, just to compare. It doesn't matter. Just let the yarn do what it's going to do. All right, now I'm back to the beginning, or you can call it the last peg in that row. And yes, do wrap that last peg. Now holding that anchor yarn or the working yarn in my left hand, hold it tighter, that whole thing's going to unravel. And I'm going to now take my hook and go under and just skim over the peg to knit over. I like to go under because I can move my hook out here. That way I'm not going to catch that top row of yarn, and just skim right over. You don't want to pull it out. You're going to make your stitches too loose. It's all going to be a little wonky for each one. So just pull it enough just to get it over. Okay. And now my anchor yarn or my working yarn, either one, is on there tight, so I don't have to worry about that. And now I can just cruise along, yarning over. I do have another video that goes slower with the cast on because I'm doing two other things in this video. We're going to cruise through this part. All right. And I'm also keeping it on top for right now. I'll push that down. See how my working yarn is getting stuck here? You want to watch for that. You want to make sure that you're not yarning over that working yarn. And I'm wondering, oh my gosh, it's stuck. What happened? And we're towards the end. Second to the last one will not have that top one on there. Why? It's for the edging purposes. You don't want to put too much yarn thickening your edges. You don't need it. All right, so I got my cast on done. Still holding my hook in my hand. I don't ever really need, I never need to put it down. I'm going to push my cast on loops or stitches down. Okay, now we're just going to do a few rows of the E-wrap. And my yarn is already set up. I'm going to go to the right again. My yarn is already set up. It's behind. You don't want to force it to go around to the front on this E-wrap. And holding on to my hook, got my left hand through here. It's going to start to hold these stitches down, these loops down, so it does not, these are loops, they're not stitches yet. Hold that down so it doesn't unravel. and just go ahead and wrap those around, going from the back to the front. And now I'm working on my first row. The cast on does not count as a row. The cast on is separate. When you count those, when you're working on projects and they're referring to row 1, do not count your cast on for that. All right, we are back to the end. Again, I'm not connecting it with the first peg here because I'm working a flat panel. If I were working in the round, I would just keep going around and around. All right, and holding now my working yarn here with my left hand to make sure it doesn't unravel, I take my bottom loop and knit it over. There we go. Now I don't have to hold it anymore. And I want to give myself some slack here. There we go. Something to work with. All right, now we're just going to go to the left and knit over, yarn over. I don't know. I've heard so much different types of terminology. I'm going to kind of throw it out there, all the different ones that I've heard, so you understand what people are talking about. I like to call, I don't know, knit over, I guess. Moves fairly quick, doesn't it? Ah, I'm stuck. Don't worry about that being too loose, because as you pull the next one, that will tighten it up. So nice how that works out. And keep your working yarn out of the way. I've seen people accidentally, it's stuck in here and they're knitting over and they're getting it triple layered. And once you do your stitches with the loom, it's very difficult to fix. So just slow down, watch and see what's going on. Make sure that you're not catching things or... All right, that was row 1. I'm still going to keep my anchor yarn here on, and we're going to go push this down to get my yarn ready for the next row. Okay, that was row 1. Now we're going to do row 2, and I identify how many rows I have because if I'm moving the first row going to the right are the odd numbers, going to the left is my even numbers. Okay, skip that first one, it's already done. Go to the next one, go from behind and wrap around to the front and get my hand in there, and I'm going to want to hold those down. Wrap about 4 and shift. You are also going to want to keep that row up on the top, keep it separate as much as you can from your bottom row. So when you knit over, you're not catching all of the strands of yarn. Just shake, let that knot, that twist, I should say, it's not really a knot, let it work itself out. And this may have loose, yep, so I'm going to go back, check that because it kind of, one strand came off. And now I am back to the beginning. Yes, wrap that last peg of the row. Okay, you skipped the first peg of a row, you wrap the last peg of a row. Okay, now I'm going to knit over. I was holding that working yarn tight so it didn't unravel. Now you're fine. You can shift your hands to go around. Just skim over the peg, don't pull your loop so you don't have them too loose or just uneven. And my working yarn likes to get stuck, so I want to make sure that I get that out of there. And I'm back to the end, and I'm going to push everything down. You can push it down as you're working or push it down at the end, whatever. It's more fun. All right, back to the beginning. Now I'm going to take this tail off of the peg because it's it's secure now in my stitches. Take this off, and I'm also going to take the knot out right away so that doesn't tighten. And because I'm going to weave this through with a needle, depending on what project I'm doing, I'm going to want to weave that through. I take that knot out so so it doesn't tighten as you work, and then you have extra to worry about. All right, pushing it down. Now we're going to do 2 more rows, so then I can have something to show for this panel when I go to do the cast off. So it's already set up for you. Go around from the back to the front. And I want to shift hands. I want to work with my right hand actually. Get my left hand in here. That was weird why I did that. All right. Make sure you skip that first peg. I don't know, for some reason I kept getting confused. Do I skip the first peg or do I not? Skip the first peg. Your edges will look better. With this being a flat panel and the knit, it's a one-sided knit, meaning the back side looks different and it's more flat. You will have the edges that will curl. I am not going to be showing you how to fix that in this video. I will do that in a different video. All right, I'm back to the end. I did not connect. Make sure you watch that. Holding it and knit over. Moves fairly quick. Okay, working yarn did not get stuck behind. We're good on the last one. And I'm going to push all of my loops down. All right, let's work out this little entanglement going on here and pull out more so I can cruise instead of having to stop to do that. Okay, I'm going to do 1 more row and then I think that should be enough. So now I'm working to the left, and so that should be an even number. So I should be on row 4. And get my right hand in there to hold those loops down. I don't even want to show you what it looks like when it unravels, but it will. That one is sticking a little bit more than usual. And I had 1 strand come off the peg. Watch that. When you do other things with the yarn, it tends to, one of the strands tend to come off. So watch for that. That's a little too close. I'm going to push that down while I see it. And we are now back. That was the end, last peg. And holding that working yarn so that doesn't unravel. Yeah, there we go. All right, and yarn over. And I'm not editing this because I want you to see about how long this takes. Give it to you in a realistic manner, because if I edited this part out, you might think, oh, that's a really quick project or whatever we're doing. No, I want you to see it for what it is. Little things that might happen along the way that you have to adjust. Okay, now that's the amount of rows that I'm going to do. Now we're going to do the cast off, and I'm going to do it in the E-wrap. All right, give myself some yarn here. Shake it out, come on. I can see it, it's loosening. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so now for the cast off. As you're working, this is the inside, this is the back side of your project. This is the front side. This is what it's gonna look like. There's your knit. All right, we are going to skip the first peg. We're gonna wrap, E-wrap, this is all E-wrap. Wrap that second peg over, but then I'm gonna go back to the first peg and I'm going to wrap behind and around to the front. So I have 2 pegs now wrapped. We're gonna knit over both pegs. Okay, leave them up. You're going to take this second peg, okay, second peg to the right, and take that off of the peg. Now I'm gonna take my left hand, shift that yarn down a little bit, and I'm going to put that yarn, that loop, over that first peg. Okay, and I'm going to take the bottom, knit over, then I'm going to shift this loop here over to the right where that empty peg was. Okay, there's our first part of our cast off. All right, next, go to the right. The next peg to the right, E-wrap, so go behind and then in front. Knit over, take it off of the peg, shift it over to the left. I'm using my hook obviously, but I also have to use my fingernails to open up that loop and push it down. All right, pull on my working yarn a little bit just to make sure that this is tight enough where that does not come off. As I grab this one, knit it over, grab it again, and put it on that empty peg to the right. All right, here we go. E-wrap, knit over, transfer to the left, pull on that working yarn so this is not too loose, knit over, grab it, transfer it to the right, moving closer to the end. Okay, I'm just going to do it. You can just watch or work along with me. Nice thing about videos, you can pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do. And the next thing I'm going to do is count how many steps this actually takes for one of those. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps for one cast off. Just in case you have distractions or whatever going on, you got to think of little techniques to help you keep track of where you are, what you're doing. And you need to unravel. Again, I'm not pulling, I'm just shaking on it. It's loose. It's not really knotted. There we go. All right, now we're going to cruise along and get this off of here. That's the trickiest part, getting the loop back on the peg. When you're doing your E-wrap, you don't really need to worry about tightening it or whatever. The only time I'm tightening a loop is when I put it on. See how it loosens up? I'm just pulling on that yarn back there, just so that does not come off the peg. And as I E-wrap the next peg, that will tighten that loop up. Don't force it. Of course, it's a little trickier because I'm double stranding it, so you have two to contend with. And now you see why I used a 24 peg loom. If I had grabbed my 41, it would take a lot longer, obviously. I don't know. The only thing I use this for, this 24, oh my goodness, you're getting away from me. Scrubbies, kitchen scrubbies, not with acrylic yarn, but little snowman hats, knitted pumpkins, maybe a scarf in the flat panel, obviously. All the rest of those would have been round, knitting in the round. Flat panel would have been a scarf. And hopefully you're knitting along with me, and I'm going at a decent pace. I mean, obviously this procedure here, you can't really go that quick. You gotta be careful, and it is a little challenging getting those loops on. The nice thing about this cast off is it looks like the cast on. I know there are other ways to do a cast on or cast off, both, but this one is consistent with how you put it on, and it's one of my favorites. It's just nice and basic. Okay. There we go. There we go. So once I get this off, that will be the end of the video. I will show you how to tighten up your cast off stitch. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I pull this off, because it's usually tighter than the cast. Whoa, look at that. Grab both of those. Did not get both loops on. That would have been horrible if I had missed that. There we go. Haha. Yeah, the cast on is by far looser than the cast off. It's not as neat, and you want to make sure, especially if you're making a nice flat panel and square or rectangle, you want to make sure that it is squared, because one end will be wider, and then when you go to fold it, it won't look right. So that will be in another video, how to tighten the cast on. Okay, we're at the last one, and got both loops on. Tighten that up, yarn over. Here we go, last one. You still have a loop on there. We're going to take and E-wrap one more time. I'm going to yarn over, okay, and then I'm going to cut about 4 inches off, because I want to have enough to be able to use my needle, and weave through, and then go ahead and take that and pull that through. Bada bing, bada boom, pulls off. You can tighten it, and there is the flat panel all E-wrap. And you can tell right here, the cast on is looser. I will show you in another video how to tighten that up. Here's the front, the nice knit stitches, and here is the back. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helps. Have a great time, and I will see you in the next video.